Alright, it's time for another movie review, another summer movie review, and this time we're going to slow things down a little bit and review a movie that might not really be considered a blockbuster. The Great Gatsby, the adaptation of a book close to 100 years old, a book that has been put on the film quite a few times already. This most recent effort, helmed by Baz Luhrmann, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Tobey Maguire, and Carey Mulligan. Um, I saw it on Saturday. This has been my first opportunity to make a video since then, and here are my thoughts. First, you will notice this review is not spoiler free because this movie is basically the book. I haven't read the book yet, but I know enough about the book to know that this movie is a very faithful adaptation to that book. And that book is close to 100 years old. So if I'm spoiling something for you with this movie, I'm sorry, but given that it's an adaptation of a book that has been out for about 90 years or something, I just don't think it's required for this film. Now, The Great Gatsby tells the story of some very wealthy people over in New York City in the 1920s, their lifestyle, the way they live, the things that happen in their life, and ultimately it all boils down to the story of one particular wealthy individual in New York City named Jay Gatsby. He throws massive parties that he never actually seems to attend. People come to his house every weekend to party and drink his booze, but they've never actually met him. Nobody knows who he is or what he did or why he has so much money. They just like to party at his beautiful mansion, and that's basically how this movie is set up. There is a framing device of Tobey Maguire's character narrating the events of the movie from the future, so he's telling the story to us. A lot of people have complained about that framing device. I don't mind it. And the story takes off from there. It's basically about the mystery of this Great Gatsby character. And if you've read the book, which anybody who's interested in reading The Great Gatsby probably has by now, the movie plays out in basically the same way as the book. You get the same beats, the same twists, the same plot advancement, the same revelations. So for that, I have to give this movie a lot of credit for being a very faithful adaptation. And if what you wanted from the Great Gatsby film is the Great Gatsby book on film, you are definitely going to get that. So in that regard, this movie is a roaring success. Now, as a movie, I think this is good. I think this was a good film. The performances carry it for the most part. I think Leonardo DiCaprio does an excellent job as Jay Gatsby, as he pretty much always does. He combines the almost smug self-awareness and the ability to conduct himself like a dignified and wealthy person, but there are times where his insecurities and his past come out, and you can see somebody who's not entirely comfortable being a extremely wealthy man. He is new money. One of the other main characters in this movie is old money, and that contrast between somebody who's been brought up their whole life to be filthy rich and someone who became filthy rich later in life is one of the focal points of this film. So there's a really good scene in the middle of this movie because, again, I'm going to spoil some stuff here. We find out that what Jay Gatsby really wants to do is he wants to meet the cousin of the Tobey Maguire character, and he knew her before he was rich, and now he wants to meet her again. And the scene where they first meet is really good because you see this guy. He's got all these decorations out. He's got all these fancy cakes out. He wants to meet this girl for tea. He does all these bells and whistles, but he is nervous as fuck. I mean, this guy is the richest man in all of New York City. People love him. People think highly of him. People think he's the greatest thing ever. He could have any woman he wants, and he wants this one Daisy character, Tobey Maguire's cousin, and he's just so nervous. He runs away. He doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know how to act. He's terrified. And that scene is played really well, and I think that's a great microcosm of how DiCaprio was able to bring the performance needed to play Gatsby. Most of the time, he's calm, he's cool, he's collected, he's every bit the super wealthy person that he should be, but every now and then you get glimpses into who he actually is. A very nervous and self-conscious person. He's in some ways he's still the penniless guy he was before he came into all this money. So that to the side, Tobey Maguire plays Nick very well. That's his character's name, Nick Carraway, quite well. He's a good kind of fish out of water character who doesn't really understand all this stuff, so as he tries to understand it, it allows us, the audience, to understand it. That's good. Carey Mulligan does a nice job as Daisy. I will say, though, there is an element to Daisy's character that I believe is very, very key to getting the point of The Great Gatsby across. So as the movie goes along, basically what Gatsby wants is he wants everything. They used to kind of fancy each other, Gatsby and Jay Gatsby and Daisy Carraway, or her last name changed, whatever. Those two characters used to kind of fancy each other, but he was poor and she was rich, so they couldn't be together. So he went away for 5 years. He was deployed in the war, and he ended up coming into millions and millions of dollars. We don't quite find out how until the end. And now he's back, and he wants everything to go back to the way it was. He wants Daisy to be waiting there for him. He wants Daisy to just fall into his arms, and he wants them to be married and be happily ever after. And nothing less than that will satisfy him. He has everything he wants. He has money, he has cars, he has a palace, he has everything, but all he really wants is Daisy. And all the fancy stuff he does is just to impress Daisy. So that, the whole idea of him already having everything, but he doesn't realize it, is very prevalent in this film. And he's pursuing, with almost a maniacal intensity, trying to convince Daisy to, let's just pretend the last 5 years didn't happen. Let's go back to the way it was, even though she's married and has a kid. But he doesn't care. He just wants, erase the last 5 years of your life. It didn't happen. Let's go back to the way it was. And for one, she's not comfortable with doing that, which is completely fair. And as those scenes play out where she's unable to give him everything he wants, it's good. But there's an element to Daisy's character that is played up somewhat in later scenes in this movie at the very end, but I wanted to see more of it in the scenes where Gatsby is pushing her to give him exactly what he wants. And the key element to Daisy's character that I wanted to see a little more of is that she ultimately doesn't give a shit. She thinks, oh, cool, this super rich guy really wants to marry me, and I already have this other super rich guy that I did marry. And she's like, that's cool. It's awesome that I have two guys going crazy over me like this. But ultimately, I don't really care that much about either of them. I don't care which one I end up with. There's that element of her character that was there in the book, and it's here in this movie, but I would have liked to have seen a little more of it. The character of Tom is very good. I don't know the name of the actor who played him, but he did a very good job of portraying the emotions it needed to. There are a couple other side actors who I thought all did perfectly fine. The movie is very in your face, but not as much as some of Baz Luhrmann's previous films. I don't think this movie is as over the top as Moulin Rouge or Australia. Um, and my feeling is that this, adaptation aside, is still a good film. And the only complaints that I can levy against it, other than that minor Daisy note, is it occasionally dragged, it occasionally got dull, but this is not an action movie. I can't really hold that against this film. So to me, The Great Gatsby, I would give it, on a scale of 1 to 100, I would give it a 70 out of 100. I can't say I enjoyed every single moment of it. I can't say I loved it, but I thought it was exactly what it wanted to be. And even that aside, I thought it was good. Um, I don't know if it's the definitive Great Gatsby adaptation, but it's good, and I enjoyed it. And if you're sick of watching things blow up, go watch it. Um, so that concludes my review. Next week, I was going to be reviewing The Hangover Part 3, but I've heard enough from this movie, people who have seen it, people who have reviewed it, to know exactly what it is. These guys have not learned their lesson. They just want to cash in on one final Hangover entry, and I'm pretty disappointed because I really hoped they would learn their lessons from Part 2, which I didn't like at all, and I really hoped they were going to do something different with this one, and it looks like they tried, but what they did wasn't any good. So I'm not going to be seeing The Hangover Part 3. I'm not going to be paying to see it, at least. And this weekend I'm going to see Fast and Furious 6 in all likelihood. I may see Now You See Me or After Earth, but I'm concerned about both films. So it's probably going to be Fast and Furious 6. So that review will be coming sometime next week. See you later.